Welcome to Real Human Design Stories, where guests share their powerful personal stories of transformation through human design. I'm Kathy Bochonko, an intuitive human design mentor and guide to radical self-trust. Join us as we explore how your human design experiment can truly change your life. Hi there. So today on Real Human Design Stories, it's a little bit different. I have a guest, but she's not really the guest. I'm the guest. So today, my lovely friend and cohort, Jess Tilly, is going to be interviewing me. She had this great idea and invited me into this space. And for those of you who don't know Jess Tilly, Jess was on episode 67, Pivoting to Your Dream Life. That's the name of that episode if you want to go back and watch it to hear her story. And that was the beginning of a really beautiful connection for us. And we now do transit talks together that are live streamed into the Intuitive Human Design group, where she is one of the admins. And really more than that, I need to get a better name for what you do in there, but that's what Facebook calls her. And I just love Jess. She is a right angle cross of the four ways. And I can't talk today. And she's a 4/6 pure generator. So her pure sacral is always something I admire, right? We all know, all of us with emotional authority, especially us especially us projectors, that undefined sacral, we sometimes have a little envy of that knowing right now, right? So anyway, so here's my dear friend, Jess Tilly, and she's going to now interview me.
Thank you. I am so wonderfully excited that we're going to do this today. As Kathy shared, we have such a beautiful, beautiful friendship, and that actually it spurred from that episode we did together with the Real Human Design Stories. And so just so grateful for this platform and grateful for Kathy and our beautiful friendship and everything, we do create together. It feels so good. So forever grateful for this. But without further ado, let me introduce Kathy. So Kathy Bochonko, affectionately known as Chatty Kathy. She's a 6'2" emotional projector, left angle cross of uncertainty, and a triple split. I'm also a triple split as well. So that's been really fun to play with the two of us together. So Kathy is an intuitive human design mentor who helps people build radical self-trust and express who they truly are. She discovered human design in 2016 while working in retail fashion and raising a teenager. By 2020, she left her career to pursue her true calling, helping people know and trust that they are effing fabulous. And if you know Kathy, you know her in her disco ball and just the fabulous energy she just really, truly brings into that radical self-trust, right? So with a deep love for style, gardening, and soulful self-expression, Kathy now combines decades of fashion experience with human design to guide others into their most authentic selves. She's a 6-line, off the roof, living her best chapter by mentoring, podcasting, and encouraging others to shine their light, no matter their age or stage in life. I'm super excited today. So we're going to explore a little bit. We're going to look at Kathy's story a little bit, but we're also going to look at the story of the podcast, where it's been, what it's going through right now, a little bit of a transformation, the pivot, and where it's going to be going, right? So Kathy and I had a conversation, and she kind of shared a little bit about this pivot, which is also interesting. We chatted about how I'm the 4 ways, which is about pivoting, the right angle cross of the 4 ways, which brings in this energy of pivoting into things. And so I actually invited her and I said, hey, would you like to, there's this feeling in me. I was like, hey, would you like to share this story? Would you like to be interviewed? It's just such a blessing and a gift she gives everybody, interviewing all these people to hear their stories. And it felt so good within me to be like, hey, would you like to share your story in the podcast? So Kathy, it was wonderful. So Kathy, as an emotional projector, she rides the wave. She waits her, 24 hours or however long, sometimes a little bit longer, right? Honoring that feeling. She's like, I'll come back to you. And she was like, yes, let's do it. So really, really excited to be here with you today.
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, that was really interesting too, because not only did I get this, I want to do it, but I I had to wait a little bit for the clarity of what that was going to look like, right? Because I've already shared my story in a couple of different episodes, solo episodes. And I'll be honest, they were the hardest episodes for me to do because that energy is just so different when I'm just talking without another person to engage with. There's so many things in my design. I have that channel of inspiration that you know well, but that really needs to be drawn out. And so the idea can start to draw out, but really to get it really going, it's best in connection with another person. So I love the idea of it, but I also know that, some of you may have heard those things. And if you haven't, I'd love for you to go back and listen to the one. I have Embracing Authenticity was where I shared my story the first time. And then I have another episode I called A Year of Radical Self-Trust. And then I had one that I called Rest, Recognition, and the Courage to Slow Down. And that was a really short one because I was slowing down. So, but anyway, this just sounded so much better than trying to convey that stuff alone. So I just love that I have this space with you.
Yeah, this is beautiful. So I guess to start, let's chat quickly about where you found human design, where you are in human design right now.
So the very first episode that I did of Real Human Design Stories was a conversation with my sister, Barbara, and she's the one who introduced me to human design. And she's a manifesting generator, and she's totally a manifesting generator. So she's still 9 years later, she's like, wait, what's my design son again? I think she might actually remember it now, but she just express process it. She got the idea of it. She's really in tune with her pure sacral response, and she muscle tests too and does it that same way. So she introduced me to it, and then I just kind of dove in, but went down some rabbit hole that scared me because I was like, whoa, still, I have a completely open ajna, and I needed to be certain of this thing before I started to really trust it. And it's really interesting to see how that's all played out because I was so in this idea of I needed to be certain that this wasn't some crazy cult stuff. And, I didn't even suspect that at first. But when I started reading about crystals of consciousness and in the earth and the 2027 mutation, which we're not going to talk about any of that today, but those sorts of things just made me go, this sounds weird. I'm not weird. Let's put this on the shelf. But it wouldn't let me go. And so for the next few years, I can remember times where I would do something and then I would go, oh, that ended horribly. And in the back of my mind, something would say, well, yeah, because you had no invitation to do that. You were totally just initiating that. Or I would get these things that say, yeah, well, you made that decision right in that moment, and that didn't work out well. And so I just kept coming back to these basic tenets of my design. And, it was one of those things where I don't even remember exactly what it was. And I think I talk about it in the other podcasts if people really want to know. But I had a moment where I was just like, wait a minute, maybe there's something more. I should look at this. And then when I started to look into my daughter's chart, which I had touched on before, but I really didn't understand anything about what it meant to be a splenic manifestor because I was still just in the early stages when I quit doing it. But when I looked into what she was going through and what that meant, it was like, oh, this makes so much sense. And then I was hooked. And that was in 2019. And just recently, I think I had the anniversary of when I had my first reading in 2019. Because in 2016, it was just a little looking into things. So that was about 6 years ago that I had my first reading. But I still consider that first 3 years as probably the purest part of my experiment because human design is meant to be, lived and just kind of did that work, did that not work? And I was not in my head about it because I thought it was not real, right? So I had this pure oh, that didn't work. That didn't work. That didn't work over and over again, right? So, yeah. So.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I can completely relate to that trepidation. When I started, I was like, what is this? Oh, it's amazing. It all fits. And I was like, no, it can't. This can't be true. There's
right?
It all fits together so perfectly. This can't be. And I went in with such skepticism as well. I was like, I need to find the flaw. And then there's some things you're like, how can this be? And the other parts you're like, yes, especially with the kids, going through my kids' charts. and seeing them like so authentically living in that energy. I'm like, okay, I want to learn more, right? Deeply stepping into that. And there's another thing, with your real human design stories, I can't tell you the number of times I reference people to that interview you did with Barbara, because everyone's like human design.
Barbara Didlow?
Yeah, with Barbara Didlow.
I just need to clarify because my sister's name is Barbara and I had just...
Yes. Thank you for that clarification. Barbara Didlow, where you did that interview with her about, how she was looking into cults and she started to look at human design through that lens. And other times when people are talking about like being a manifester with like projector channels, and I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, there's this other, like all the interviews that I have referenced for people to like really come back and experience, because, human design, there's so much knowledge out there. The knowledge is there, the information is there. But I feel like the piece that was missing for me is like that lived experience. Like, how does this feel for you? How is this showing up for me? Is it this part? Isn't it that part? Is it the generator part of me? Is it the channel of inspiration? Is like, where is it coming in? And seeing other people's like really, truly lived experiences has been so, so amazing. So I absolutely love everything you share in your podcast. Coming back to that, again, that lived experience of it. So I think that's really beautiful. But then, there's always a time, like everything has its time. And now feeling that energy of that pivot. So what's kind of calling you right now? What's speaking to you with this pivot?
Well, let me pick up a little bit, because the way I started in these podcasts was, again, my sister and we have these wonderful, deep conversations, a lot like you and I do, right? Where we talk about all this really cool stuff, via you and I, it's via Zoom. With her, I'm talking to her via Messenger. She lives in Thailand. So like these deep conversations. And I remember one night she says, do you think people talk about stuff like this? And I was like, some, but not many I know. And she's like, wouldn't it be cool for other people to like be able to know that these are things you can talk about? And we're just like, so we had this idea to have a conversation in the Facebook group, Intuitive Human Design. And it just started as this kind of natural thing to then me invite other people that I knew that I thought were really cool to start doing the same thing. And I called it Sunday Story Hour. And it was just a time when people would share their story and talk about the weird stuff that they were into. And, and it was just like, but it was always, starting with the human design element, because it was a human design group. But one of the things I've really known in that group since I took it over, what was it, 3 years ago now? 2 years? I don't know. Time is just like a construct that just limits us. So I have no idea how long it was really. But when I took it over, it was very much a human design community where people posted like human design factoids and stuff like that, right? And there was a lot of good conversation there. I'm not trying to in any way knock any of it. Good resources shared. But there's a million human design groups. And really what I see this group as having evolved into as the intuitive part, right? How can we know the radical self-trust whole element? So as I was doing these conversations with people, there was so much where I really had to lean into that trust, because there were people who would say to me, well, how is you're interviewing other people, you're showing their expertise. How is that helping you in your business? You should do things that highlight you as a human design professional. This is, everybody has an opinion, right? So there were all these things. And I still even remember Chetan Parkin teasing me when I interviewed Kerala, his wife, first. And when I logged onto the Zoom, I was totally surprised when I thought I was letting Kerala into the Zoom room. And here's Chetan Parkin, and I've never spoken to him in my life at that point, right? And I was like, oh, hi. Like, not surprised, right? And then he's like, oh, I'm just getting her stuff set up for her. She's, I don't know, putting on her lipstick or whatever he said, some thing. And so he's like, so what's this projector doing inviting people into these podcasts? And he was totally teasing because he's a projector. But there was still a part of me that was like, had kind of had that feeling in the beginning of like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to invite these people? Like, it was one thing to invite, I was okay to invite Chetan, I decided, because he was a projector, right? A projector can invite a projector. And that was still getting hung up in the rules or whatever. And then I had this like epiphany during the early days, like I think before I ever even invited Chetan, I had this epiphany of like, that's not what it's about, this needing the invitation. It's about, do you need the invitation? Because if you need the invitation, if you need that recognition, if you're looking for recognition in what you're doing, then don't do it. Right? Because if you can't invite Chetan Parkin and not feel like there's something that's making you less than if he says no, right? If you can't do it without needing it to make you feel like, ooh, look at me, I'm getting to interview Chetan Parkin. Look at me, right? So there was this whole thing that happened during the process of this where I was investing money in producing these and all this. And then I was like, what are you doing? What are you spending all this money on this for? Is this really smart business things? And then I realized how much I got out of it compared to what I was spending and how much it would cost me to talk to some of these people, right? Or could I even pay to talk to some of these people, right? So these priceless conversations were something I valued. But as someone running a business, putting all this effort into, okay, now how can I have this produced into all these little digestible things, or how can I organize this in ways that people really are understanding what they're listening to? Because if someone looks at, for example, your episode, it's called Pivoting to Your Dream Life, and it says you're who you are. So, I mean, some people will have enough trust in themselves to just look at it and see that they're, if they're pure sacral, they might get a and okay, listen to it. But other people are going to get in their head and they're going to go, well, I'm not a 4/6 and I'm not a pure generator, and that's not my incarnation cross. So I'm not going to listen to this story. But some of the best insights that I've gotten from people about things came from conversations where people had nothing in common with me in the little labels, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes getting those little pieces out in ways that people know they exist is something I really want to do, but I'd spend all my time as like a full-time editor. And then, plus when I put these podcasts out initially, I had 30 something before I ever even put them out on podcast platform. So those, I feel like they all just got kind of dumped at the same time. And then the podcast started to build momentum, but people don't necessarily know to go back to those other episodes. They just go to the newest episode. So I don't really know when I started to feel like I wanted to make a pivot. I wanted to do something different. Part of it was this feeling that I was leaving all this gold on the table back there, right? Like these conversations with people like Robin Wynn, who has written some of the most amazing human design books. And we had an incredible conversation a couple of years ago. Or, that manifestor conversation I had with Adrienne Roach, which that's got a lot of views because she has her own big community that has seen it. But there's still a lot of people who have not seen that episode who would really find value in it. So I started to think, why I keep putting energy into getting something new. And I think that's often something we do. We go after what's new and shiny instead of polishing up the old coins. And so I feel like I kind of want to polish up some of the other ones into new ways of finding that info. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of found myself not putting invitations out there. And even when someone else would say to me, do you want to interview this person? I'd be like, maybe someday, not right now. So I don't have any new podcasts scheduled for interviews at this moment. That doesn't mean I won't do one in 2 weeks. But right now I'm feeling like I want to do something creative with what I've got, with all this gold.
I love that. So just really want to take a moment here to celebrate you, because I think so often in life, we're like, what's next? What's next? I'm here. What's next? And just starting from that place where you're like, we're having these beautiful, juicy conversations. Let's share them with people, right? Let's start to actually put them out there. And so starting from that place where there weren't even these conversations, and then creating this beautiful podcast where you're sharing these people's stories, where you're sharing these gold nuggets with people. And then perfect projector energy, right? Like refining, like, okay, now this is here. Now I created this next step. What's that next piece where I start to take those gold nuggets? But also, again, celebrating, like looking at, oh my goodness, look at what I've created so far, right? Like really, really just truly anchoring in how amazing it is that this exists, that there is that YouTube, that there are those podcasts where people can go and find them. And then also that you're really trusting that call within yourself. Because so often it's easy. You're like in momentum. You're like, okay, this is how I do it. That rhythm piece, right? That fixed rhythm where it's like, this is how I've been doing it, but honoring. And if that's not the perfect example of your radical self-trust, where it's like, okay, I've been doing this. That felt great. But now it's calling me to do something different and calling you. What I heard in there was that creative expression. How can I do this in like a more creative way, which is so perfect with your energy, right? Especially with your earth in gate 8, right? Contribution, that channel of inspiration, having that whole 1-8. So just really just kind of celebrating that trust in yourself and that trust in the pivot that it gets to change. I think that's
And I appreciate that recognition there. I feel like part of it is being able to know it's going to change, but I have no idea what the next episode is going to look like. And that's kind of exciting and terrifying at the same time. One of the other things that I did that feels like it was almost as brave as actually first hiring someone to make all these podcasts is I told the person who has been producing these all that I'm not going to use them anymore. I'm going to do this myself, at least for right now, because the whole creative element, I don't really know what it's going to look like. So this episode is going to be the first one that I'm producing without the professional editing. So, it'll be interesting to see if people feel that, can you tell? Does it feel, I'm not saying does something seem different, but does it seem like the quality of the sound or anything? Funny, I'm saying that and my voice is getting, but is the sound quality different? Do you notice the difference? Because, I'm just curious about that. It's one thing what I listen to and what I hear versus others.
opening for that feedback. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, it's such a beautiful thing though, to trust yourself, especially in the business world. Again, coming back to such radical self-trust when it's like, it's working. Why change it? Well, why? Because something within me is calling me to do that, right? I'm feeling that within myself and trusting that. Well, by business standards, this is how you do it. And you're like, that's wonderful. But I get to now step into this uncertainty, which is your incarnation cross, right? Holding that uncertainty, because even within our nervous systems, we look for that certainty. We look for that stability of this is how it's done. And looking, outside of ourselves, like how is everybody else doing it? And you're really coming back into yourself and going, I don't know what this is going to look like. I'm going to play with this. I'm going to do this and I'm going to find the way that feels right. And so just that permission even that gives to other people feels really good.
Thanks. And that gate 8, like as you mentioned, the one thing that always resonates the most to me is as soon as I start thinking, well, this is how everybody else does it, or someone else, or this person I admire, or whatever. As soon as I start looking at someone else as the example, not as the inspiration is good, but as the example, that's how I slip into mediocrity, because I am a unique, once in a lifetime cosmic event, as Karen Curry Parker likes to say, and I love that expression. And if I model myself off some distant star over there, I'm dimming my light over here. So
I love that so, so, so deeply. So important. Yeah. That radical self-trust. I keep saying it. I love it.
me
Coming
too.
back to you, really, really anchoring it and that's part of that 6th lane too. You're living the experience of it. You're embodying that energy of going, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to role model what it looks like to live by your authenticity, to live by what it feels like to be you, uniquely you, even if it is different. And so, yeah, I love, and then you're certified, right, in quantum alignment, right?
quantum alignment system and quantum human design, which are two different things, both run by Karen Curry Parker. Quantum alignment system is actually the reason I became, started certifying in quantum human design specifically, because I was so fascinated by the concept. The quantum alignment system, for those who don't know, is a protocol that combines EFT tapping and flower essences and just the idea of how different emotions and things get stuck in our body. And it's a great tool for deconditioning. And I loved it so much when I experienced it at my first human design conference. There was a little group session where we all got to do it. And so much stuff came out. So much stuff started coming up in me. And I was like, oh, wow. Oh, wow. Yeah. And then I knew pretty quickly, like, by the time I got home, I was pretty sure that I needed to do this and wanted to do this system. So I certified in that. And at that time, that was, you had to, I think, certify in QHD1, Quantum Human Design 1. And I did that. And for a while, I was like, just going to stay with that. But then I decided I wanted to go through the rest of the protocol because I was able to deeply study traditional human design through a lot of different vehicles. And the thing I loved about quantum human design is it always brought this like bright light back into all of it. And so I've always seen the value in both systems, and I purposely chose not to call myself anything. I don't have a label. I'm just a guide to radical self-trust, right? And because I don't think any one is the answer, I like to just feel into what is working. So gene keys is another thing that I dabble with, but I'm in no means an expert in, but I find such great value in the way that Richard Rudd breaks things down into the shadow, the gift, and the city, and that idea of the shadow having an introverted and extroverted expression. And Chetan Parkin uses that in his human design teachings as well. So this idea that it's always changing, right? That there's like a core of who we are and how we operate, which I think I'm really fascinated in learning more about the core teachings of human design, like the original download that Ra got. It didn't even contain things like authorities and types. Those were things that came in later. So I think there's just so many ways of looking at things, and with this uncertainty cross and my completely open ajna, it's been quite a journey to go from like, well, which one's right? Right? That was the way I used to be. Like, I used to have, at one point, my Facebook profile picture was actually a meme of a sketch of someone on like a really old looking PC and a cloud from behind saying, oh, I used it on one of our transit talks as a background. And it was like, come to bed. And they're like, I can't, someone's wrong on the internet, right? Like, the person's like, no, like, that's not how it is. I know. And so when I would get into something I'd want, like human design, like I had to know, is it this way or is it this way? So, but now I've found the beauty in being able to sit with the possibilities, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And it feels like an unboxing. You don't want to box yourself and define yourself by one set thing, right? That freedom piece. And that just feels so, so good. And it feels like definitely with that projector energy, that first piece is recognizing yourself, right? Like you were speaking to before, like if you're going out there looking for that recognition and doing the things for the recognition, that's a different dynamic. That's a whole different energy. And that's also just, it's so interesting because like our friendship, I value so, so deeply. And that came from that invitation that you gave me to be on the podcast. And the conversations we've been able to have with that of like, what does that look like for you for that recognition piece? Like, what does that look like for you for that invitation? And really starting to understand like how, like, I always understood like the text definition, right? But to really feel that lived experience of it, and as like a generator, how to support that. And that was so interesting if you want to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's another example of how we oversimplify things when we say, I went to this immersion, and basically it was, projectors should not speak to generators until generators initiate something with projectors. And that, I understood the example they were trying to give in that situation or whatever. And I won't say there wasn't anything I learned from it, but part of it was I learned that that's bull. But there's so many different things that come into play with how you feel in aura with someone. So here I am, someone with a fully defined will. Every gate of my will center is defined, right? And I also have a defined solar plexus through this really strong channel of emoting, 3955. And here you are with an undefined solar plexus and an undefined will, and
completely open will.
Yeah, completely open. Right? And so to say that I shouldn't initiate something with you, if I say something and your solar or your sacral says, great. The problem is when we don't understand the way that aura mechanics of a projector really get into the identity center of another. And then we confuse their sense of self and the way they respond to us with our own value, right? So projectors, we need that recognition, or we can start to feel like we don't need it from you. We need it from somewhere, because we're constantly like sticking our aura in other places, right? And we're absorbing that. And if nothing is saying, oh yeah, see me, I love it when you see me, we start to feel this icky kind of way. And so there is this idea, and when I say we, this is how I feel it, how I experience it. And I've heard other projectors say similar things. So I never want to sound like I'm saying, you're a projector, this is how you're going to feel. Experiment. What's it feel like to you? What's your experience with recognition? I have 3 motors of the 4 motors defined, right? My will is completely defined by every gate in one channel. I have my root and my solar plexus connected through that 3955, which is, some pretty intense individual energy. And then I also have both my sun gates and other gates on my undefined sacral, so they're always grabbing onto things. So I have a lot of intensity for a projector, whereas other projectors who have no motors defined, for example, are going to be very different in how they feel about that idea of like, well, I'll just do it, and if they don't like it, I just don't care, and it's not going to affect my recognition. If they don't have that access to other motors on their own, it might be more, I don't know what the right word is, I'm thinking of, different. Harder for them to respond. They might not have the resiliency to be able to be like, I don't care, it's fine, right? Because they feel like they need that energy from others.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the conversations, right? Like having those conversations of like, what are the nuances of this? Because we had such a vulnerable conversation where you sent that to me and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I was feeling like I want to do something with you, but like, I was like, who am I, right? Who am I to like say something to you? And what is that thing that I even want to say to you? And sitting in that energy, but I still felt it. And potentially there was also that piece of recognition when we met at the High Desert Human Design Conference, just, like hugging you. And I remember you were wearing like the most amazing outfit. So anybody who doesn't know Kathy just always has the most fantastic outfits, just like so beautifully put together, like so well thought out, like everything's matching. Everything just looks so, so phenomenal. If you see her, you can't like not see her in her beautiful outfits. And I just remember I was like, you're amazing. Like, this is fantastic. I love your energy. I love your playfulness. I love like your authenticity, that you're so deeply you. And so, that little piece of potentially that recognition of just love there, right? That then you did do that invitation, and that's blossomed into something so beautiful. Even this conversation we're having now, right? That, never to limit yourself. And I think that's really that energy and that knowledge that you're bringing forth by everything that you do share with these real human design stories, with these podcasts. And, if you want to speak to a little bit about, with your triple split, how that feels for you, like, wanting to do having all these different parts where it's like, you have this amazing fashion background, you have, all this amazing style within you that you help and you guide people. And that's something you offer for people as well, to go through and work with your authentic style and fashion. And then also you have the podcast, and then, we're doing a karma by design. We've got that as well. And then also the transit talks. So like, how does that feel for you?
Yeah, there were times where I would think, boy, you're really scattered. Why are you all over the place? Pick a lane, Kathy, right? Pick a lane. But what I realized is life is this beautiful multi-lane highway. And how many of us really, when you're in 4-lane highway, don't change lanes sometimes, right? And it's interesting, right? You gotta go now. Sometimes it can be dangerous if you're not, ever staying in your lane. But I don't want to limit myself to just one thing. And as a triple split, so for those who don't know what a triple split is, Jess and I are both triple split. And basically what that means is when you look at your chart and you look at where your channels are, the channels are where two centers get connected by a colored in line, or sometimes it's two colors, if it's conscious and unconscious. So if you have two centers that are connected to each other, but then there's no channels connecting them to some of your other centers that are defined, those are called splits. So a triple split means you have three different groups of centers that talk to each other, but they need some kind of connection for them to connect up together. Hopefully that was clearer than I think it was. And so what happens is you are designed to connect in different ways with different things. And so what I find is that every time I do something a little bit different, it brings this new flavor into something else. Like when I went with you to Austin, when we did this karma clearing course, and when you were like, do you want to offer this together? And I was like, I think so. But remember, I was like, let me wait. I want it to be clear. But the more I really realized is it was, yeah, this is the kind of stuff sometimes that really limits people from trusting themselves, because they have this fear that they can't explain. They don't know where it comes from. Well, it comes from 42 lifetimes ago, or it comes from grandma's side of the family being in concentration camps, or it comes from, whatever it is that we can release when we honor it, when we acknowledge it through these processes. And that can liberate us to do the other things we want to do in a bigger and bolder way, right? So showing up as who you are on the outside in a way that expresses who you are on the inside. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody is supposed to show up in the bright colors that I wear all the time. But I realize that's who I am. I love all these bright colors. And so it's become so much easier to dress because everything I wear is the same grouping of bright colors. So, this necklace could go with so many different things because it's so many different colors, right? And I have this way that I just put things together. And there was a time, for a long time, I used to be like, oh, maybe this is too much. Let me tone this down. if I'm going to wear this bright colored necklace, I better wear, you know, some kind of more subtle, maybe I'll wear it with black. I don't know. Like I used to have these things of like, it's too much. And what I realized is that was conditioning. That was this idea that people couldn't handle the real me. They wouldn't accept, I shouldn't say couldn't handle, would not accept the real me is probably the main thing. And that as I realized that when you have a defined identity center, especially when it's defined to your throat, that your expression is so important in identifying who you are. And there's this fear of like, what if people won't accept it? What if they won't accept me? And so we constrict, we turtle, we make ourselves smaller. And as I have found that I can stick my head back out and nobody is there biting my head off, right? That I have the ability to protect myself, to draw the right things in, to realize that if someone looks at me and says, wow, that's too much, it's too much for them. It's not too much for me, right? And it was interesting because my daughter, honestly, was the one who really drove it home recently to me, where I put something on and I said, I don't know, is it cute or is it too much? And she's like, you are my mother. And I was like, what? And she's like, what is too much? She did not mean it as a way that she was making fun of me. She was like, when have you ever cared what was too much? And I was like, okay, you're right. I like it. I'm wearing it. And so this idea of helping people to know that they're doing something because they want to do it. Maybe you really, really love maybe you really, really love black and all you want to wear is black. And I know you're wearing black, but I know that's not all you wear. I wear black too. It is? Okay, but I do wear black also. So I'm not knocking black. But and I'm not, if you are a person who wears all black, again, no judgment. But there are people who wear black because it's easy and because it goes unnoticed a lot of times. Now, in some situations, black is really noticed. So there are people who really love a certain look and they want to wear that all the time. And that is great because it's them. If they're doing it from a place of like, this is who I am, people who like, you might be too young, but I think of somebody like James Dean, the actor, and everybody just thought of him in the white t-shirts and the Levi's and that whole like style in the 1950s that was very much created by him, or at least as far as I know it was. And people identified him as it, and it was his signature style. And it wasn't about him doing it because at least I don't think anyone told him to do it, or because it was what was safe or expected or anything like that. So if you are somebody who wants to show up every day in your overalls, because you just love overalls, right? I had mine on yesterday for transit talk but I only use them in the garden, really. But if that's your style and you want to do it all the time, do it. Embrace it. Don't apologize for it. Love it, right? And do it in whatever way feels right for you. And that's your style. That's great. But what I really am trying to help people with is when they think they should do a certain thing because it's expected. They think they need to wear the conservative suit because they're a business coach. And they think they need to, quick go change into this thing for this kind of event, not because they're excited about doing it, because they think it's what they should wear. And there are still people who will say stuff like, oh, you can't wear navy and black together. Why not?
That's who.
I have been fascinated with these women on Instagram that I follow several different accounts, and I'd have to look up what they are, where they talk. There's all these women who are like in their 80s. Most of them are in places like New York and whatever. And there's one called I don't know. I'd have to look it up. And he's always talking to these women who just have on these fabulous, like, things. They've owned that stuff for probably 30 years, and they just put it together in a way that is so them that it's timeless, right? And that's what it's about when you really are embracing your own style. Is there's a timelessness to it. There's a pure joy. There's an invitation in it. And I think, honestly, for projectors, it's something, it gives generator types something to respond to. As a projector, so many people respond to my clothing and invite me into conversation because of it. But what I realized when I was last working in retail was there's also a negative side to all of that that makes people feel that they're supposed to fit into some society idea of beauty that feels like pressure and constriction, and that's what made me quit retail. I didn't like the way that it perpetuates this just idea of consuming more and more and that sort of thing. But what I did love was when I could take somebody who was just feeling really confused and distraught about what to wear or how to feel good in something and be like, come here, let's talk. All right. And they'd walk out like, oh my God, I feel so good. Right.
I love that so much. And it's, the beautiful thing here is feeling that deep thread within you of that radical self-trust that's going to come through in everything that you're doing. Even, the deconditioning dance party that you're doing. I absolutely loved how you invited everyone. You're like, listen, you want to come in sparkly, like tutu dress, come in your sparkly tutu dress. You want to come in your jammies, come in your jammies. You want to wear your sneakers. Like, I don't even remember how you wrote it. It was so beautiful. It was like, come as you, whatever you looks like, whatever feels good for you, come as that. Like, we want you exactly as you. It doesn't need to look like anything. It doesn't have to be anything except who you are. And the way I like to phrase that is that permission to be you.
Yeah.
And you so deeply bring that into everything you do. And you are the living like embodiment of it, that role model of it. Like, look, this is me and I'm showing up like me, but you don't have to look like me or be like me or dress like me. Come as you. Let's celebrate you as the unique, beautiful person you are, exactly however that feels. And just for anybody who's listening right now that's like, I'm not sure, or potentially you don't even have your chart yet for human design, and you might be like stepping into human design for the first time. Kathy has a really cool, what is it called? Meet Your Chart report that you can get on her website. So you get your chart, it's a free chart, but you also get this Meet Your Chart, and it just goes over like the basics of the chart. So you can get that information. And then obviously there's like additional like paid things you can do, and working with Kathy directly. If you want to speak more to that, like what are the other exciting things that you're doing right now?
Yeah. So to clarify, what you're talking about with the dance party is this year at the Colorado Human Design Conference and actually at the High Desert Human Design Conference in Santa Fe, I'm going to be leading an event that's really about, someone asked, are you going to be teaching us some dance moves? No, I'm not teaching you anything. Your body's going to lead you, right? I'm going to be leading these events, and I'm so excited that you're at least able to be there with me in Colorado. I will miss you in Santa Fe. So, and but the whole idea is connecting with that core of who you are and getting out of your head and embracing that fun, playful bit, that finding that inner child that, remember what we've all seen the videos of little kids who will just dance like crazy fools. We're going to do that. Okay. We're going to just like not care what anybody else is doing, not try to dance like anybody else unless you really want to, whatever, and just move and laugh and, listen to some really upbeat music, high frequency messages in there and that sort of thing, and just have some fun. And so as for what people can do if they want to work with me, is that what, going back to that part of the question? So the core offering that I absolutely love is mentorship. Okay. And I know that is a very personal, intimate commitment. And that's where the real transformation happens, is when we can weekly meet and discuss and go through aspects of your design. We can do tapping, we can do all sorts of things, and we can talk about your closet. We can talk about your past life, your design karma. Any of those things can happen within the container of mentorship, because it's always based on what's going on for you and where it's going to go, so that the ultimate goal of mentorship is for you to know and trust yourself enough to really be the flippin' fabulous person you came here to be, right? And because we are all incredible. We all came here with really big plans. Our souls had really big dreams. And, we're still in there. Like, something's going, come on, let's go. And so I'm just here to help you get out of your own way. So that's my favorite thing to do. And it can really look like whatever it needs to look like. And I also am going to be starting in June. We're doing a masterclass for the Karma Clearing by Design. Well, not starting in June. That is in June. And then at the end of June, we're going to offer the full program, right? There's going to be one in June, one in July. They're two different ones. There's Love Karma Clearing, and Destiny Karma Clearing. So we've got that. And then at the end of July, I haven't picked the dates yet, I'm going to be doing something with another style challenge. And I haven't decided exactly what that's going to look like. I did one in February, and, it went really well. But there are some things I think, that people kind of got lost in the weeds a little bit. So we're gonna do some different stuff in that, and that'll be fun. And then I'm working on kind of a fun thing that who knows how long it'll take, and it'll take as long as it's meant to take. But I'm creating a disco ball oracle deck. So, and
So excited for all those wonderful things. Yes. So much coming through. And, just really, really, again, celebrating you and trusting this pivot that you're taking right now. And for people to just connect into your energy and trust that that's what's going to come through. Who knows?
Oh, and then if another way to connect is the transits. Every 6 days when the sun transit changes, I write a transit report that I put up in the Intuitive Human Design Facebook group. And then this fabulous woman named Jess Tilly and I do a transit talk live and streamed into the group, but you can also find it on YouTube or podcast platforms. And it's called Transit Talk. And we chat about the transits with whoever shows up. Sometimes no one shows up. Sometimes a few people show up. Maybe you'll show up sometime. We'd love to have you. And it's just a great way to talk about what it feels like for us and how it feels different for different people. So I love that.
Yeah, and it's so much fun. So we dress up as the different transits. So depending who's the sun and the earth, we dress up like, what does this look like? So full invitation, if you ever would like to join us, to show up in what you feel like this energy feels like for you. It's just fun. It's playful. And again, really celebrating you right now that you're making this pivot and letting go of the how, right?
Right.
You're like really, truly just going, I'm trusting. It's unfolding, it's shifting, it's changing, it's perfect, it's beautiful. Stepping deeply into that incarnation crest.
Yeah. And I've thought about it. I don't even know what how the schedule, like let's say if I decide one week I'm going to make a bunch of clips about projectors. Mm-hmm. I might do, you might see several weeks in a row where the podcast is projector clips. Or you might see that I decided to just release 5 episodes that week. I don't know. I haven't decided. It's going to be kind of a go with the flow thing. So, and a lot of people will say, oh, no, you need to release your podcast on the same day at the same time so people know. Well, you know what? You're going to get some surprises from me.
I love it. It feels like freedom. It feels like, I think I sent you that song once, Kaido, Freedom. That song, like, yeah, that's what it feels like. And it feels so, so good for you. So just perfect and aligned. So celebrating you in that. Is there anything else you wanted to share with everybody?
just that you're effing fabulous, Jess Tilly, and I appreciate you, and I'm really grateful that you did this. And hopefully, it answered some things people didn't even know they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
To get feedback from people if they, I'm curious what sort of things you haven't, asking other people, and you too. What have you not done because you didn't know what it would look like, so you just didn't start it, right? So.
Yeah. Absolutely. So definitely share those questions, right? Put those in the comments, and just questions you have in general, or questions for uncertainty and sharing. And that's the beauty of this. It's really deeply that lived experience. So thank you so much, Kathy. Really love chat. I love chatting to you always. So this was such a beautiful treat to be able to do this with you.
Love you, Jess Tilly.
Love you.
Thanks, everybody. Peace out. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Real Human Design Stories. I hope these stories help you see how human design can reframe not only your own story, but also the stories you tell yourself about your relationships. If you're ready to tell a more empowered story about who you came here to be, I invite you to explore ways to work with me directly at kathybochonko.com. Supporting this podcast is easy. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star rating, comment, and share with your friends. This helps the podcast grow the most. You can also become a contributing sponsor for as little as 99 cents a month. Details are available at realhumandesignstories.com. Thanks again for being here. Peace out, everybody.